The question came without warning, cutting through the comfortable silence of their Sunday morning drive like a knife through butter. Tom Brady glanced in the rearview mirror at his 14-year-old son Jack, who sat staring out the window at the passing Massachusetts countryside, his face reflecting something Tom had never seen before doubt. "Are you proud of me, Dad?" The words hung in the air between them, heavy with an uncertainty that made Tom's chest tighten. In all his years of facing fourth-quarter pressure, of standing in sold-out stadiums with millions watching, nothing had ever felt as monumentous as this single question from his son. Tom's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as memories flooded back. All those missed dinners, all those games Jack had played while Tom was traveling, all those father-son moments that had been sacrificed on the altar of greatness. He'd always told himself it was worth it, that he was building a legacy his children could be proud of. But now, looking at Jack's reflection in the mirror, he wondered if he'd been building the wrong kind of legacy entirely. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Jack's shoulders seemed to sink with each passing second, and Tom realized the son was interpreting his hesitation as the answer itself. The greatest quarterback in NFL history, the man who never choked under pressure, was choking on the most important conversation of his life. What Tom said next would not only shock Jack, but would reveal a truth so devastating about the cost of greatness that it would change everything between them forever. Because sometimes the hardest victories aren't won on football fields. They're won in the quiet moments when a father has to choose between being a legend and being a dad. The question had started innocently enough 3 hours earlier when Tom picked Jack up from his weekend with his mother. It was their designated father-son time, something Tom guarded fiercely despite his demanding schedule. They were heading to Jack's baseball game. Not a professional stadium filled with screaming fans, but modest little league field where Jack played second base for the Brookline Bears. Tom had been looking forward to this all week. Between training camp preparations and business meetings, these Sunday games had become his anchor, his connection to normal life. He loved watching Jack play, loved seeing his son's passion for the game, even if it wasn't football. Baseball was Jack's choice, his own path, and Tom respected that more than Jack probably realized. But as they drove the familiar streets of their old neighborhood, Tom noticed something different about his son. Jack was quieter than usual, less animated. Usually, he'd be chattering about his team's chances, about the opposing pitcher they'd be facing, about his batting average. Today, he just stared out the window with that distant look that reminded Tom uncomfortably of himself during his most introspective moments. "You okay, buddy?" Tom asked, adjusting the radio volume down. "You seem, I don't know, somewhere else today." Jack shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed volumes. "Just thinking. About the game? About stuff." Tom knew that tone. It was the same one he'd used with his own father when he was Jack's age, wrestling with questions too big for words but too important to ignore. The difference was Tom's father had been a regular guy, an insurance salesman who came to every game, who was present for every important moment. Tom was the one with the impossible schedule, the one whose phone never stopped ringing, the one whose life existed in the public eye. They pulled into the parking lot of Brookline High School, where the Little League games were held. Tom could see other families setting up lawn chairs along the sidelines, coolers filled with snacks, siblings playing catch while waiting for the game to start. It looked so normal, so beautifully ordinary. Tom found himself envying those other fathers sometimes, the ones whose biggest stress was making sure they remembered to bring the orange slices for halftime. As they walked toward the field, Jack's glove in his hand and his uniform already on under his jacket, Tom noticed how his son's teammates reacted to seeing him. There were the usual whispers, the pointing, the excitement of having Tom Brady at their game. But Tom also noticed something else. The way Jack seemed to shrink slightly when the attention turned his father instead of him. "Jack!" called out his coach, a friendly man named Mike Rodriguez who ran a local insurance agency and coached because he loved the game. "Ready for today?" The Panthers have been talking trash all week about how they're going to shut down our offense. Jack smiled for the first time that morning. "Let them talk, coach. We'll do our talking on the field." Tom felt a surge of pride watching his son interact with his teammates. Jack was clearly respected here, not because of who his father was, but because of who he was. He was a kid who stayed late to help the younger players with their swings, who never complained when he struck out, who celebrated his teammates' successes as loudly as his own. The game started well for the Bears. Jack's first at-bat came in the second inning with 2 runners on base. Tom found himself leaning forward in his folding chair, more nervous than he'd ever been in a Super Bowl. This was different. This wasn't about his own performance, his own legacy. This was about watching his son chase his own dreams. The first pitch was a strike. Caught looking, Jack stepped out of the box, took a practice swing, and stepped back in. The second pitch was outside. Ball 1. The third pitch was right down the middle, and Jack connected beautifully, sending a line drive into the gap between center and right field. Both runners scored, and Jack slid safely into second base with a double. The crowd erupted, all 12 people in the stands, and Tom found himself on his feet, cheering louder than anyone. This was what it was all about, not the Super Bowl rings or the MVP awards or the magazine covers. This was his son, making his own mark, creating his own moments of glory. But as Jack dusted himself off at second base, Tom noticed something that made his heart sink. Instead of celebrating with his teammates, instead of acknowledging the cheers from the stands, Jack was looking directly at him with an expression Tom couldn't quite read. It wasn't joy or pride or excitement. It was something much more complex. A mixture of hope and fear that reminded Tom of his own childhood, of moments when he desperately wanted his father's approval, but was terrified he might not get it. The game continued, and Jack played well. Solid defense, good at-bats, smart base running. But Tom couldn't shake the feeling that something was building toward this moment, that the morning's unusual quiet was leading somewhere neither of them were prepared for. After the Bears won 8-5, the team celebrated with their traditional post-game pizza party at Tony's, the local pizzeria that had been sponsoring Little League teams for 30 years. Tom watched as Jack laughed with his friends, as he recounted the game's highlights, as he seemed to transform back into the confident, happy kid Tom knew him to be. But during the drive home, the quiet returned. And that's when Jack asked a question that would change everything between them. "Are you proud of me, Dad?" Tom's throat felt tight as he finally found his voice. "Jack, of course I'm proud of you. You played great today. That double in the second inning was—" "That's not what I mean," Jack interrupted, still staring out the window. "I mean, are you proud of me? Like as your son? Not just because I got a hit or made a good play, but because of who I am." The way the question hit Tom, like a blindside sack. He pulled over to the side of the road, putting the car in park, and turning to face his son. Jack was still looking out the window, but Tom could see his reflection in the glass. The uncertainty, the vulnerability, the desperate need for something Tom wasn't sure he knew how to give. "Jack, look at me." Slowly, reluctantly, Jack turned around. Up close, Tom could see that his son's eyes were slightly red, as if he'd been fighting back tears. "Where is this coming from?" Tom asked gently. Jack's voice was small when he spoke. "Tommy Morrison's dad was at the game today. He's just a regular guy, works at the bank or something. But after Tommy struck out in the 5th inning, his dad came over the fence and told him it was okay, that he'd get it next time. And Tommy he looked so happy, like his dad's opinion was the only thing that mattered." Tom felt something crack inside his chest. "And you don't think you have that with me?" "I don't know," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes I feel like you're proud of Tom Brady's son, you know? Like you're proud that your kid can play sports and isn't a total embarrassment. But I don't know if you're proud of just me. Jack, the kid who likes to read comic books and sometimes gets scared during thunderstorms and still sleeps with his stuffed elephant sometimes." The honesty in Jack's words was devastating. Tom realized that in his effort to be supportive of Jack's athletic pursuits, he might have been sending the message that his love was conditional on performance, that his pride was tied to achievements rather than simply to the miracle of who Jack was as a person. "Can I tell you something, Jack?" Tom said, his voice rougher than usual. "Something I've never told anyone?" Jack nodded. "When I was your age, all I wanted was for my dad to be proud of me. Not just when I threw a touchdown pass or won a game, but proud of me as a son. And you know what? He was proud of me when I forgot my homework, when I struck out, when I was too scared to ask a girl to the school dance. He was proud of me just for being his kid. Tom paused, gathering his thoughts. I thought I was doing the same thing with you. I thought by coming to your games, by cheering for you, by supporting your baseball career, I was showing you how proud I was. But I realize now that I might have been doing it wrong. What do you mean? Tom took a deep breath. I mean that my pride in you has nothing to do with baseball, Jack. Nothing to do with sports at all. I'm proud of you because you're kind to your teammates. I'm proud of you because you help your mom with groceries without being asked. I'm proud of you because you stick up for kids at school who get picked on. I'm proud of you because you still want to spend time with your old man, even though I know I'm not around as much as I should be. Jack's eyes were definitely teary now. Really? Really? Tom reached over and squeezed his son's shoulder. And you know what else I'm proud of? I'm proud that you asked me this question. It takes courage to ask for what you need, especially when you're not sure you're going to get it. That's not something I could do when I was your age. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching cars pass by on the quiet suburban street. Finally, Jack spoke again. Dad, can I ask you something else? Anything. Do you ever wish I played football instead of baseball? The question hung in the air, loaded with all of Jack's insecurities about living up to his father's legacy. Tom realized this was perhaps the most important answer he would ever give. Jack, do you know what my biggest regret is about my football career? Jack shook his head. My biggest regret is that I was so focused on being the best quarterback that I sometimes forgot to enjoy the game I fell in love with when I was your age. I was so worried about living up to everyone's expectations that I lost some of the pure joy of just playing. Tom turned to face his son fully. When I watch you play baseball, you know what I see? I see a kid who loves the game. I see someone who plays for the right reasons. Because it's fun, because you love your teammates, because you love the feeling of making a great play or getting a clutch hit. I wouldn't trade that for all the football talent in the world, even if I could be as good as you. Especially if you could be as good as me, Tom said with a smile. Because being great at something is meaningless if you're not happy doing it. And you're happy playing baseball. That makes me happier than any Super Bowl ring ever could. Jack wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I love you, Dad. I love you too, buddy. More than you'll ever know. As they drove the rest of the way home, Tom realized that this conversation had changed something fundamental between them. For years, he'd been trying to be the perfect father the same way he tried to be the perfect quarterback. Focus on performance, on results, on measurable outcomes. But Jack didn't need a perfect father. He needed a present one. He needed a dad who was proud of him not for what he accomplished, but for who he was. The next week, Tom made a decision that shocked his inner circle. He turned down a lucrative endorsement deal that would have required him to miss Jack's next 3 games. When his agent questioned the decision, Tom's answer was simple. Some things are more important than money. At Jack's next game, Tom did something he'd never done before. Instead of sitting in his usual spot, analyzing Jack's technique, and thinking about areas for improvement, he simply watched his son play. He cheered for the good plays and encouraged him after the mistakes. He talked to the other parents about normal parent things, school, weekend plans, the weather, and when Jack hit his first home run of the season, a towering shot over the left field fence that had the small crowd on its feet, Tom didn't see a future athlete or a potential legacy. He saw his son, running the bases with pure joy on his face, and he felt a pride so deep and uncomplicated that it brought tears to his eyes. After the game, as they walked the car together, Jack looked up at his father with a grin. Did you see that one, Dad? I saw it, Tom said, putting his arm around his son's shoulders. But you know what I'm most proud of? What? I'm proud that you remembered to touch all the bases, Tom said with a laugh. And I'm proud that the first thing you did after you crossed home plate was make sure Tommy Morrison was okay after he struck out. Jack beamed. Coach always says the best players make everyone around them better. Smart coach, Tom said. Sounds like something my dad used to tell me. As they drove home together, both father and son understood that something had shifted between them. The question, "Are you proud of me?" would never need to be asked again, because the answer had finally been given in a way that mattered. Not through words alone, but through presence, through understanding, and through the simple but profound act of father seeing his son, really seeing him for exactly who he was. Tom Brady had won 7 Super Bowls, had been called the greatest quarterback of all time, had achieved a level of success that most people could only dream of. But sitting in that car with his son, he realized that none of those accomplishments compared to the feeling of knowing that Jack felt truly, completely loved and accepted for who he was. Sometimes the most important victories happen not in stadiums filled with thousands of cheering fans, but in quiet moments between a father and son, when love is finally expressed in a language they both understand. And sometimes the greatest comeback isn't from a 28-3 deficit in the Super Bowl. It's from the realization that you haven't been connecting with the person who matters most and finding a way to make it right. The question that had started their journey that Sunday morning, "Are you proud of me?" had led them to an answer that neither of them expected. Pride isn't about performance or achievement or living up to someone else's legacy. Pride is about love, pure and simple. And love, Tom finally understood, wasn't something you earned. It was something you gave freely, completely, and without condition. Jack never had to ask that question again, because every day after that, in ways both big and small, Tom made sure his son knew the answer.